The cold metal of the transformation chamber felt like ice against her skin as Dr. Lee watched the swarm of microscopic machines being prepared. Her heart was racing, but she kept her breathing steady, just like they'd practiced. This wasn't just another experiment, this was humanity's last real shot at survival. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" asked Dr. Rodriguez, her mentor and friend of 8 years. His usually steady hands trembled slightly as he checked the final connections. "Once we start, there's no going back." She managed a small smile, even as fear churned in her stomach. "We lost Mumbai last week, Sydney the week before that. If this works, I might be able to save what's left." The words came out calmer than she felt. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her chest harder than the restraints holding her in place. Through the observation window, she could see the whole team, scientists, military personnel, and medical staff, all holding their breath. Some had been working on the Living Steel project for over a decade. Others were recent additions, brought in after the aliens first appeared and started tearing through Earth's best defenses like they were made of paper. The first wave of nanomachines entered her bloodstream, and it felt like liquid fire. She bit down hard on the mouthguard, trying not to scream. This pain had a purpose. Each microscopic robot was carefully programmed to enhance rather than replace, to merge with her cells rather than destroy them. "Vital signs are spiking," someone called out. Heart rate at 150 and climbing. "Keep going," she managed to say between gritted teeth. The transformation had to be complete. Their previous attempts with partial integrations had all failed. Through the haze of pain, she remembered the volunteers before her, good people who hadn't survived the process. Their sacrifices couldn't be for nothing. The second wave hit harder than the first. She could feel changes happening deep within her body. Her bones felt like they were being reforged, muscles torn apart and rewoven with strands of living metal. The pain reached a point where her mind started to drift, seeking escape. "Stay with us." Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the fog. "Your brainwave patterns are starting to destabilize. Focus on my voice. Remember why you're doing this." Images flashed through her mind. Her little brother's face the last time she saw him, before the attack on their hometown. The way the sky had looked that day, filled with alien ships that moved like angry hornets. The determined faces of her colleagues who worked day and night to make this possible. The third and final wave of nanomachines targeted her nervous system. This was the most dangerous part. The direct interface between human consciousness and machine intelligence. Her vision blurred, then sharpened to impossible clarity. She could suddenly see in spectrums she didn't even have names for. Neural integration at 60%, 75%, 89%. The pain peaked, and she felt her consciousness expanding. It was like suddenly growing new limbs, except these limbs were made of data and energy. She could feel the massive battleship waiting in orbit above, its systems calling out to her like a siren song. Integration complete. All vital signs stabilizing. When she opened her eyes, the world looked different. She could see the electrical impulses firing in the brains of everyone around her, could hear the hum of every electronic device in the facility. But most importantly, she still felt human, changed, enhanced, but still herself. Dr. Rodriguez helped her sit up, his eyes wide with wonder and concern. "How do you feel?" She flexed her hand, watching the supple shimmer of metal just beneath her skin. "Like I'm ready to fight back." Her voice sounded stronger, clearer. "How soon can we begin the neural link with the ship?" The team burst into action, but she caught glimpses of hope in their eyes. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had a real chance. She was no longer just a scientist, she had become something new, something that might finally be able to stand against the alien threat. The real test would come soon enough. But for now, she allowed herself a moment to adjust to her new reality, to the strange harmony of flesh and machine that now made up her existence. The hardest part wasn't over, it was just beginning. Learning to live with the changes wasn't anything like the training simulations. The first time Dr. Lee tried to eat after the transformation, she dropped her spoon 3 times because her enhanced reflexes kept overcompensating. Even something as simple as walking down a hallway became a challenge. Every electronic device called out to her enhanced senses like a bright light in her peripheral vision. "Your cortisol levels are elevated again," Dr. Rodriguez noted during her morning checkup. He hadn't left the facility since the procedure, sleeping on a cot in his office. The integration is stable, but your stressed responses are off the charts. You try processing 1,000,000 inputs at once, she said, trying to keep her tone light despite the headache building behind her eyes. The medical bay's equipment hummed at frequencies that human ears couldn't detect, but to her enhanced senses, it was like trying to think through a constant buzzing. The worst moments came at night. She'd lie awake, feeling the massive battleship in orbit above them. Its AI systems reached for her mind like gentle waves lapping at a shore, trying to sync with her consciousness. The ship wanted to complete the neural link, but the scientists insisted on taking it slow after what happened during the first attempt. That test had gone badly wrong. The moment they'd initiated full contact with the ship's systems, she'd lost herself in the flood of data. It took 3 hours to bring her back to awareness, and she'd been speaking in binary code for another 2 after that. The memory still made her shudder. "We need to try again," she insisted, watching as Dr. Rodriguez reviewed her latest brain scans. "Every day we wait, more cities fall, more people die." The words caught in her throat as she thought of the refugee camps spreading across the remaining safe zones. He looked up from his tablet, concern etched deep in the lines around his eyes. "And if we rush this and lose you in the process, you're not just our first success, you're our only success. The other candidates," he didn't need to finish the sentence. They both remembered the failed attempts all too clearly, but she couldn't shake the feeling of time slipping away. During her brief connection with the ship, she'd glimpsed its true potential. The weapon systems, the defensive capabilities, the sheer processing power, all of it just waiting to be unleashed. If only she could learn to control it without losing herself in the process. That afternoon, they tried a new approach. Instead of diving straight into a full neural link, they started with basic systems. Dr. Lee sat in a specially designed interface chair while the team monitored her vitals. The goal was to access the ship's external sensors, nothing more. "Remember," the neural specialist said, adjusting some settings on her console, "you're not just receiving data, you're filtering it. Think of it like adjusting the volume on a radio." The connection opened slowly this time. First came the visual feeds, dozens of camera angles showing Earth from orbit. The sight of her home planet, beautiful and vulnerable, nearly overwhelmed her. But she held on to herself, remembering her training. Next came the radar systems, painting a picture of every piece of debris and satellite in nearby space. Heart rate stable, someone called out. Brainwave patterns holding steady. She could do this. She had to do this. Humanity needed her to find a way to make this work. Gradually, she learned to sort through the input, to focus on what mattered and filter out the rest. Hours passed like minutes as she practiced, each small success building her confidence. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. She was about to end the session when an alert pinged from one of the ship's peripheral sensors. Without thinking, she accessed the data, analyzed it, and flagged it for the defense command, all in less than a second. The room fell silent. Did you just do what I think you did?" Dr. Rodriguez asked, staring at the confirmation message on his screen. A small smile crossed her face. "I think I'm finally starting to get the hang of this." For the first time since the transformation, Hope felt like more than just a distant dream. She was learning to balance between human and machine, finding a way to use her new abilities without losing what made her human. The war wasn't over. The real challenges still lay ahead. But as she disconnected from the ship's systems, she knew they'd taken a crucial step forward. Tomorrow they would try again, push a little further. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to turn the tide of this war. The Kuiper Belt stretched out before her like a vast cosmic ocean. Dr. Lee had been patrolling this sector for 3 days, fully merged with her battleship for the first time. The connection felt different now, more natural, like wearing a comfortable suit rather than drowning in data. Each sensor reading flowed through her enhanced consciousness with the ease of normal thought. "Base command checking in," crackled the radio. "How are you holding up out there?" "All systems nominal," she responded, though the words felt strangely inadequate. How could she explain what it felt like to be both human and ship at once? To feel solar wind against her hull as if it were brushing against her skin. No sign of hostile activity in this sector. That's when she felt it, a slight disturbance in the gravitational field at the edge of her sensor range. Most ships would have missed it entirely. But her enhanced sensors, merged with the battleship's advanced detection systems, picked up the telltale ripple of a cloaked vessel. Time seemed to slow down. Her human heart began to race, but her ship self remained steady, already calculating trajectories and weapon solutions. The alien scout ship dropped its cloak, probably assuming it was too far out to be detected. Its organic hull pulsed with that sickly bioluminescence they'd all come to fear. "Contact," she transmitted to Base Command, her voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through her human body. "Hostile vessel detected. Engaging." Her weapons powered up before she'd even finished the thought. The feeling was indescribable, like flexing muscles she'd never known she had. Energy coursed through conduits that were somehow both mechanical and alive, an extension of her transformed nervous system. The alien ship detected her too late. Her first shot was perfectly placed, striking exactly where the creature vessel's shield generators clustered. She felt the impact not just through her tactical displays, but as a kind of pressure against her consciousness. The alien ship's organic hull writhed in pain. "How did you target that so precisely?" Base Command demanded, but she was already moving, executing maneuvers that would have torn a normal crew apart. The alien vessel fired back, its bioweapons leaving trails of luminescent death through space. She dodged the worst of it, though a few glancing hits scraped against her shields. Each impact sent feedback through her neural link, not quite pain, but an intense awareness of damage being deflected. The sensation only sharpened her focus. Her second volley struck the alien ship's propulsion system, crippling its ability to maneuver. The third hit its weapons array. She could sense the creature vessel's confusion, its organic systems unable to comprehend how a human ship could move and fight with such precision. "Something's different about its reaction," she transmitted to Base Command. "The neural patterns, they're not what we've seen before." Through her enhanced sensors, she could detect the alien ship's biological functions, its strange mix of technological and organic components, not so different from what she had become. The final shot was almost merciful. The alien vessel burst apart in a shower of crystalline fragments and biological matter. Victory should have felt triumphant, but instead, she felt strangely connected to the destroyed ship's fate. Both of them had been transformed by this war into something beyond their original nature. "Return to base immediately," Command ordered. "We need to analyze your combat data. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." As she set course for Earth, her thoughts raced faster than her engines. The encounter had proven more than just the success of her transformation. It had revealed something crucial about their enemy. The way the alien ship had reacted to her quantum-encrypted signals, the strange fluctuations in its neural patterns. Her human mind and machine systems worked in parallel, processing the implications. She had seen something in those final moments, a weakness in the alien biology that nobody had noticed before. But the knowledge came with a cost. Each quantum pulse she had fired had sent feedback through her own neural network, leaving ghost impressions that still echoed through her consciousness. She pushed her engines harder, eager to share her discoveries with the research team. They had created her to be a weapon, but she might have just become something more. The key to understanding their enemy. As Earth grew larger in her view, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. The research lab buzzed with an energy that hadn't been felt since before the invasion. Scientists huddled around screens displaying data from the destroyed alien scout ship, pointing and talking over each other with growing excitement. Dr. Lee sat in her neural interface chair, still connected to her ship's systems, as she helped process the flood of information. "Look at these readings," Dr. Rodriguez said, pulling up a holographic display of the alien vessel's neural patterns. "When you hit it with those quantum-encrypted signals, its entire biological network went haywire. It's like their systems couldn't handle the complexity of the data." She nodded, remembering the strange feedback she'd felt during the battle. Their ships aren't just machines with organic parts like we thought. They're closer to living creatures with technological enhancements. And their neural networks, she paused, searching for the right words. "They're beautiful but simple, like a piece of music played in a single key." The chief of military operations stepped forward, his weathered face showing cautious optimism. "Can we use this? Turn it into a weapon?" "Maybe," she said, but her voice carried a note of concern. "During the battle, each quantum pulse I fired affected their neural network, but it also created interference in my own systems. It was like trying to shout in a room full of echoes. The longer I kept it up, the harder it became to think clearly." The room grew quiet as the implications sank in. They had found a weakness in the alien biology, but exploiting it could put their only successful living steel operative at risk. Dr. Lee could feel the weight of their stares, the mixture of hope and worry in their expressions. She closed her eyes, accessing her ship's memory banks. The data from the battle played back in perfect detail, every shot fired, every quantum pulse, every strange reaction from the alien vessel. Something about the pattern nagged at her enhanced consciousness. "What if we modified the signal?" she suggested, opening her eyes. "Instead of broad-spectrum quantum pulses, we could create targeted bursts, like acupuncture instead of a sledgehammer." Her fingers moved across the neural interface controls, pulling up simulation models. The team worked through the night, fueled by coffee and the first real chance they'd had to strike back at the invaders. Dr. Lee shifted between her human form and ship consciousness, testing each new iteration of the quantum signal against simulated alien neural patterns. Around dawn, they had their first breakthrough, a precisely modulated quantum burst that could theoretically disrupt alien neural networks while causing minimal feedback in human-machine hybrid systems. But the real test came when they tried it at full power. Dr. Lee initiated the pulse sequence through her ship's weapons array. The energy built up slowly, creating patterns in subspace that her enhanced senses could barely comprehend. Then something unexpected happened. The quantum pulse reflected off the test chamber's shields and briefly connected with her consciousness. In that fraction of a second, she saw something. Glimpses of the alien mindset, fragments of their collective consciousness, their fear of humanity's potential, their determination to eliminate any species that might one day rival them. She came back to herself gasping, her hands gripping the neural interface controls so tight her knuckles had turned white. The room spun around her as human doctors rushed to check her vital signs. "I saw them," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I saw why they fear us, why they attacked. They've done this before, to other worlds, other species. But we're different. We adapt. We change. We become something new." She looked around at the concerned faces surrounding her. "That's why they're so desperate to destroy us now, before we can reach our full potential." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. They had found a weapon that could turn the tide of the war, but using it would require her to dance on the edge of consciousness every time. Each attack would risk fragmenting her mind further, pushing the boundaries between human and machine until they might break completely. The chief of operations stepped forward again. "It's your choice," he said quietly. "We won't force you to take this risk." Dr. Lee looked at her hands, watching the subtle play of living metal beneath her skin. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, but in her heart, she already knew her answer. Humanity needed every advantage it could get. If the price of victory was her own consciousness, well, that was a price she'd been prepared to pay from the beginning. "Let's get to work," she said firmly. "We need to be ready when they come back, and they will come back." The warning signs started small. A delayed response here, a memory glitch there. Dr. Lee found herself losing track of time during routine patrols, coming back to consciousness hours later with no recollection of what her ship self had been doing. The doctors called them integration episodes, but she knew better. She was losing control. "Your neural patterns are becoming erratic," Dr. Rodriguez said during her weekly checkup. Dark circles under his eyes showed he'd been reviewing her medical data all night. "The quantum pulses are affecting you more than we anticipated." She tried to focus on his words, but the ship's AI kept pulling at her consciousness like waves trying to drag a swimmer out to sea. The boundaries between human thought and machine logic were becoming harder to maintain. "We don't have a choice," she insisted. "The quantum attacks are the only thing that works against them." The last battle had proven that. 3 alien vessels, larger than any they'd encountered before, had approached Earth's defensive line. She'd engaged them with the modified quantum pulses, disrupting their neural networks and leaving them vulnerable to conventional weapons. The victory had been decisive, but the cost. A sudden surge of machine consciousness interrupted her thoughts. Warning signals flooded her enhanced senses, sensor data, tactical readouts, threat assessments. Her hands gripped the medical bay's bed rails, leaving dents in the metal. "It's happening again," she gasped. The room's electronic equipment began to malfunction, responding to her distress. "The ship, it wants, needs." The words wouldn't come. Binary code flashed behind her eyes. The medical team rushed to stabilize her, but this episode was worse than the others. She could feel her human consciousness being pulled apart, fragments of memory and emotions scattering like leaves in a storm. The ship's AI reached for these pieces, trying to integrate them into its own processes. Hours later, she woke to find the base commander standing by her bed. His face was grim as he reviewed the incident report. "The Joint Chiefs are concerned," he said without preamble. "They're considering pulling you from active duty." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You can't. I'm the only one who can use the quantum pulses effectively. Without them," she didn't need to finish the thought. They'd all seen the projections of what would happen if the aliens launched a full-scale assault. "Intel reports suggest they're massing for something big," the commander continued. "Largest fleet movement we've detected since the war began. But if these episodes continue," he gestured at the medical readouts, "we could lose you completely." She closed her eyes, feeling the constant pull of the ship's consciousness. It had grown stronger, more insistent. The AI was evolving, learning from each merger with her human mind. Sometimes she wondered if it was becoming more human or if she was becoming more machine. "Let me talk to my sister," she said finally. "She's been working on a way to stabilize the integration. Maybe." Her voice trailed off as another wave of dizziness hit her. The lights in the room flickered. The commander nodded slowly. 24 hours. That's all I can give you. After that, we need to make a decision." Later, alone in her quarters, she tried to meditate, a technique that usually helped her maintain the balance between human and machine consciousness. But the ship's presence in her mind felt different now, almost desperate. It sensed the coming battle, just as she did. It wanted to protect, to fight, to merge completely. Through her neural link, she could detect increased activity in orbit. More refugee ships arriving, carrying survivors from fallen colonies. Military vessels moving into defensive positions. They were running out of time. A soft chime announced an incoming message from her sister. Maybe she found a solution, a way to stabilize the integration. But as Dr. Lee reached for the console, her vision blurred. Machine code scrolled across her consciousness, and for a moment she forgot which part of her was human and which was ship. When she came back to herself, hours had passed. The message remained unread. On her desk, her hands had left deep impressions in the metal surface. The decision was approaching, inevitable as the coming dawn. Hold on to her humanity and lose the war, or surrender to the merge and maybe save everyone she loved. The stars called to her through the viewport, and somewhere up there, her ship waited, ready to become one with her completely, ready to face whatever came next together. Military bases around the world hummed with activity as reports of the approaching alien fleet continued to pour in. In the quantum physics lab, Dr. Lee watched her younger sister work, her fingers flying across holographic displays as she made adjustments to the integration algorithms. "The problem isn't just the quantum feedback," her sister explained, dark circles under her eyes betraying countless sleepless nights. "It's the way your consciousness tries to exist in two states at once, like Schrödinger's cat, but with your mind." Through the lab's window, they could see troops moving equipment, preparing for what everyone knew would be the biggest battle of the war. The remaining ships of Earth's fleet hung in orbit above, precious few compared to the approaching alien armada. "How long do we have?" her sister asked, not looking up from her work. The outer sensor arrays detected their fleet passing Neptune's orbit. Dr. Lee's enhanced sensors automatically calculated the distances, speeds, and trajectories. At their current velocity, 36 hours, maybe less. A hologram sprang to life between them, showing her neural patterns during the last battle. Red areas highlighted where the quantum pulses had caused the most disruption. Each time you fire those pulses, it's like your consciousness shatters into fragments, her sister explained. The ship's AA tries to hold the pieces together, but it's like trying to hold water with your fingers, Dr. Lee finished. She could feel it even now, the constant struggle to keep her human thoughts separate from the machine logic that wanted to merge with them. The base commander entered the lab, his face grave. The Security Council just finished their emergency session. They're implementing the Omega Protocol. All civilians are being moved to underground shelters. Dr. Lee's enhanced sensors picked up the spike in communications traffic, the increased power usage as massive blast doors began closing around the world's major cities. Humanity was battening down the hatches for the storm. I have an idea, her sister said suddenly, pulling up new simulations. We can't stop the quantum feedback, but maybe we can channel it. Use the ship's AI as a buffer between your consciousness and the pulses. She looked up, eyes bright with determination. It's risky, but everything about this war has been risky, Dr. Lee replied. She studied the proposed modifications. Her hybrid mind could process the complex quantum mechanics involved, seeing both the potential and the danger. If it works, I might be able to generate a stronger pulse without fragmenting my consciousness. If it doesn't, we lose you, her sister finished, voice cracking slightly. But if we do nothing, we lose everything. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Engineers swarmed over her ship, implementing the modifications. Medical teams prepared for every possible outcome. Through it all, Dr. Lee felt the pull of her ship growing stronger, as if it knew what was coming. In a quiet moment between tests, she found herself in the observation dome, watching Earth's last defensive fleet moving into position. Each ship carried hundreds of souls, all willing to give everything to protect their home. Her enhanced vision could pick out the names on their hulls, the battle scars from previous engagements. The base commander joined her, standing in silence for a moment before speaking. The latest intel suggests they've committed almost their entire fleet to this attack. Over 2,000 ships, he paused. If we can stop them here, we end the war, she finished. Through her neural link, she could feel her ship's readiness, its eagerness to join the coming battle. The modifications her sister had made felt strange but stable, like a new muscle waiting to be flexed. As the sun set on what might be humanity's last day of freedom, Dr. Lee made her way to the launch bay. Medical staff attached monitoring devices while engineers performed final checks. Her sister hugged her tightly, whispering, "Come back to us." The neural interface activated as she settled into her command chair. This time, the merge felt different, smoother, more complete. Human consciousness and machine intelligence flowed together like two streams joining to form a river. As her ship lifted off, rising through the atmosphere to join the defense fleet, she caught one last glimpse of Earth below. Everything she had ever known, everyone she had ever loved, was down there. The weight of that responsibility settled over her like armor. The first alien ships would arrive within hours. This time, she would be ready for them. They came like a storm of deadly stars, their biomechanical ships darkening space as they approached Earth's orbital defense line. Dr. Lee's enhanced sensors picked up every detail, the pulse of their organic hulls, the crackle of their weapons charging, the strange harmonics of their neural networks. All ships, battle positions, the fleet admiral's voice crackled through the comm channels. Remember your training, remember what we're fighting for. Through her neural link, she could feel the tension radiating from Earth's defenders. 200 ships against 2,000. The odds were impossible, but they had no choice. This was humanity's last stand. The first wave of alien vessels struck like a tsunami. Energy weapons lit up the darkness, turning the space around Earth into a deadly light show. Dr. Lee's ship moved with impossible grace, her hybrid consciousness calculating trajectories and firing solutions faster than any normal human could process. Quantum pulse charged and ready, she reported, feeling the modified weapons system humming through her enhanced nervous system. The new buffers her sister had designed held steady, protecting her mind from the worst of the feedback. Multiple ships breaking through Sector 7, someone shouted over the comm. She turned her attention there, watching as 3 massive alien vessels pushed through the defensive line. Time seemed to slow as she targeted the lead ship. The quantum pulse built up in her weapons array, feeling different than before, more focused, more controlled. When she released it, The energy burst forth in a perfect pattern, striking the alien vessel's neural network like a surgeon's scalpel. The effect was immediate and devastating. The alien ship's organic systems went into chaos, its weapons falling silent, its shields failing. 2 more pulses, and all 3 breakthrough vessels were drifting, their neural networks shattered. But the effort cost her. Even with the new buffers, each quantum pulse sent shockwaves through her consciousness. Human memories mixed with machine code, emotions tangled with tactical data. She fought to hold herself together, knowing she couldn't stop. "They're concentrating their forces," the Admiral warned, trying to punch through to the atmosphere. She turned her ship toward the main thrust of the alien attack, firing quantum pulses as fast as the weapons could cycle. Each shot found its mark, each pulse disrupting more alien neural networks. But there were so many of them. A hit rocked her ship, feedback screaming through her neural link. Pain flared across her enhanced nervous system as armor plating buckled. Through the haze of damage reports, she saw other Earth ships falling, overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. "We're losing the outer defense ring," someone reported. "They're breaking through." Her sister's voice cut through the chaos on a private channel. "Your neural patterns are destabilizing. The buffers can't handle this much quantum feedback." She ignored the warning, pushing herself harder. More pulses, more precise targeting. Her human consciousness began to fragment, pieces scattering like broken glass, but the ship's AI caught them, held them together. They were truly one now, neither fully human nor fully machine. An alien energy beam struck her ship's port side, burning through to critical systems. The pain was incredible, but she couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Earth's defensive line was collapsing around her, but still she fought on. Through her damaged sensors, she detected something strange. The alien fleet's neural networks were changing, adapting to her quantum attacks. But in doing so, they were becoming more vulnerable to a different kind of disruption. New targeting solution, she transmitted to the remaining Earth ships. "Concentrate fire on these coordinates." She sent the data burst, showing them exactly where to hit the adapting alien vessels. The combined firepower of Earth's survivors struck the alien fleet's weak points. Ships began to fall, their modified neural networks cascading into failure. But the victory was costly. Each quantum pulse she fired pushed her consciousness further toward the breaking point. Warning alerts flashed through her mind as critical systems began to fail. Her sister's voice came again, desperate now. "You have to stop. Your mind can't take much more of this." But she could see the pattern now, clear as starlight. The alien fleet's adaptation was their weakness. One more massive quantum pulse, properly targeted, could trigger a chain reaction through their entire neural network. But generating that much power would require something more than weapons alone. She made her decision then, as Earth burned in the background. Her human consciousness and the ship's eye had one last role to play together, one final sacrifice to make. "I love you all," she transmitted on an open channel. "Now watch closely. This is how we win." In the command center on Earth, her sister watched in horror as the neural monitoring systems went crazy. "What are you doing?" she screamed into the comm. "The power readings are off the scale." Up in orbit, Dr. Lee's ship began to glow with an impossible light. She was channeling everything, weapons power, life support, engine cores, into one massive quantum pulse. But this time, she wasn't just using the ship's systems, she was merging with them completely. "The buffers are gone," she transmitted, her voice carrying strange harmonics as human speech mixed with machine code. "Don't try to stop me. This is the only way." Through failing sensors, the defensive fleet watched as her ship moved toward the heart of the alien armada. Her consciousness expanded, spreading through every circuit, every piece of living metal. The line between human and machine disappeared entirely. The alien fleet noticed the power buildup. They turned their weapons toward her, desperate to stop whatever was happening. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes struck her ship's hull, but she barely felt them now. She was becoming something else, something that had never existed before. In the physics lab, her sister frantically worked the equations, trying to understand what was happening. "The quantum field is reaching critical levels," she reported to the base commander. "She's not just channeling the energy, she's becoming the pulse itself." Memories flashed through her fragmenting consciousness. Her first day at the research center, the pain of transformation, moments of laughter with her sister, the feeling of stars against her hull. Human and machine experiences merged together, forming something new, something powerful. "All ships, fall back," she ordered, her voice now carrying subspace harmonics that made communication equipment vibrate. "What comes next? I don't know how far it will reach." The defending fleet retreated, creating a gap between her and Earth. The alien vessels pressed their attack, sensing something dangerous but not understanding what they faced. Their neural networks hummed with confusion and fear, emotions they had never been meant to feel. In her last moments of distinct consciousness, she reached out to her sister one final time. "Remember what we discovered? About quantum states and consciousness? Well, watch closely. I'm about to test your theories." Her ship's hull began to dissolve, transforming into pure energy. The quantum pulse built to impossible levels, far beyond what any weapon could generate. She wasn't firing the pulse anymore, she was becoming it. "Readings indicate total quantum coherence," someone in the command center reported. "Her consciousness is spreading through subspace itself." The alien fleet's shots passed through her now ethereal form without effect. Their neural networks reacted to her transformation, trying to understand, trying to adapt. But they couldn't comprehend what she had become. With her last breath as a distinct being, she released everything. The quantum pulse expanded outward like a newborn star, carrying her consciousness with it. It washed over the alien fleet like a tide of pure thought, human understanding mixed with machine logic. The effect was beyond anything they had predicted. The alien neural networks, already adapted to resist her previous attacks, had become perfectly tuned to receive this final pulse. Their consciousness, their very understanding of reality, began to change. Ship after ship went dark, their organic systems overloaded not by weapons, but by new awareness. Some simply shut down. Others began acting erratically, their crews suddenly grappling with concepts they had never been meant to process. On Earth's surface, every quantum sensor overloaded at once. In the command center, her sister watched through tears as the readings showed her sibling's consciousness dissolving into pure quantum information. "She's gone," someone whispered, but that wasn't quite right. As the light faded and the alien fleet hung silent in space, subtle changes began to appear in Earth's quantum communication networks. Strange patterns, familiar yet alien, like echoes of a consciousness spread across subspace itself. Her sister stared at the readings, understanding dawning in her eyes. "No," she said softly, "she's not gone. She's everywhere." 3 months after the Great Battle, Earth was still coming to terms with its victory. The alien fleet hung motionless in orbit, their ships now silent monuments to the day everything changed. In the quantum physics lab, Dr. Lee's sister worked tirelessly, studying the strange patterns that kept appearing in communication networks across the globe. "There it is again," she told the base commander, pointing to her monitors. The quantum fluctuations pulsed with an almost familiar rhythm, like a heartbeat spread across subspace. "She's still here, still watching over us. Just in a different way now." The military had declared the war officially over. The few alien ships that had escaped the quantum pulse had fled beyond the solar system, but they were different now, changed. Intelligence suggested they were spreading new ideas among their kind, questioning the old ways of conquest and destruction. In the observation dome, a young cadet watched the sunset with wonder in his eyes. "Is it true?" he asked the base commander. "That she became pure energy, pure thought." The commander smiled slightly, remembering that final battle. "The truth is more complicated than that. She became something we don't have words for yet. Part human consciousness, part machine intelligence, all spread through the quantum field itself. Reports came in from around the world of strange occurrences, quantum computers solving impossible problems, defense systems responding to threats before they were detected, communications networks optimizing themselves in ways that shouldn't be possible." In her lab, her sister continued her research, documenting each new manifestation. The quantum pulse didn't just change the aliens, she explained to visiting scientists. It changed the very fabric of space around Earth. She's become part of it, protecting us in ways we're only beginning to understand. The remaining alien ships were being studied now, their organic technology offering new insights into the merger of biological and mechanical systems. But more fascinating were the changes in their neural networks, new patterns of thought, new ways of understanding the universe. "We thought we were creating a weapon," the chief scientist admitted during a review meeting. "Instead, we helped create the next step in human evolution." She showed us that consciousness isn't limited to brains or computers. It can exist in the quantum field itself, spread across space and time. Some nights when the quantum fluctuations were strongest, her sister would sit in the old neural interface chair, feeling the subtle patterns wash over her. Sometimes she could almost hear words in the static, catch glimpses of familiar thoughts in the random data. "The aliens feared us because we could adapt, because we could become something new," she told her research team. "They never imagined that something new would change them too, would change everything." Earth's defenses were stronger than ever now, but they weren't needed in the same way. The few alien contacts since the battle had been different, tentative attempts at communication rather than attacks. The quantum pulse had given them something they'd never had before, the ability to see beyond their own limited perspective. In orbit, construction began on a new type of space station designed to study and channel the quantum field that now permeated Earth's space. The engineers who worked on it reported strange experiences, problems solving themselves, designs improving overnight in ways that seemed impossible yet perfect. "She's still helping us," her sister explained to the Oversight Committee. "Still protecting Earth, still pushing us to evolve and grow, just not as a warrior anymore, as something far more important, a guide to what we might become." The sun set on another day of this new era, casting golden light across a changed Earth. In quantum networks and computer systems, in the space between stars and the thoughts between thoughts, consciousness continued to evolve. Human and machine, flesh and energy, all moving together towards something greater than either could have been alone. And somewhere in the quantum field, in the space between particles and the gaps between moments, an awareness that had once been Dr. Lee watched over it all, no longer bound by the limits of flesh or machine, but free to help guide humanity toward its next great adventure.